Good day. This is the making of the John Batchelor Show. I'm joined by my colleague and co host and friend, Jeff Bliss. Jeff Bliss is Pacific Watch. And we come to reporting this morning and for many days ahead of us on the significant political actor, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. Jeff has allowed me to watch Mr. Newsom over these last years, and he is an impressive political actor. I emphasize actor, not to disdain in any fashion his project, which is to become president of the United States for 2 terms, but that part of his performance is the skill set that will do him best in the primary campaigns ahead of him, in my measure. Now, this is an outsider looking at California. Jeff is an insider, and we will record in a moment our thoughts about Gavin Newsom, but I wanted to greet my colleague and say, do I say correctly, Jeff, that Gavin Newsom has a very strong presence in California, and everybody in California has an opinion of him? We put those 53 or 54 electoral votes in his pocket. At the same time, we know there is dissent. So what is not a general opinion. What is the mixed opinion of Gavin Newsom in California right now? Good day to you, Jeff.
Good day, John. It's great to be with you. It's the mixed opinion is that not much has been accomplished under his watch. As a matter of fact, in most metrics, the state has slipped backwards, whether it's jobs, population, taxes. You should go down the list, and people are generally not happy. But he stands as a bulwark in California, certainly, against Donald Trump and other Republicans. And this is a solidly blue state these days. And so he is, the leader, not just being the governor, but he's kind of the leader here in the state party. And that's why people tend to gravitate towards him. People don't really talk about his accomplishments, as I said. They don't tout the fact that a high-speed rail has been built, or that, our education system in California, once the envy of the world, has slipped so badly. And I could go down through the list and on, but he's really looked at as the anti-Trump, as opposed to, yay, Gavin, let's cheer him on. He's been doing great things here.
That's a good summary. We will address that immediately. My contribution to this conversation is that watching the media here on the East Coast, he is by far and away the preferred candidate. The editorial pages, the op-ed pages, the feature assignments, all of that adds up to a big express train coming from California. Now, we'll address my presentation to you, Jeff, as we begin our Pacific Watch this morning with the Newsoms. And I mentioned that his second wife, the one who's with him now, the mother of his children, is a very impressive speaker. I watched her in a video that you brought to my attention, and she is clearly skillful. I mean, this is a campaigner. And so we can look for the presentation, and I've already seen it in headlines, of 2 for 1. That was the Clinton appeal back in the 1990s, and it worked for the nomination. I'm talking about the nomination, not general election. You must win the nomination, and once you do, you've got a 50-50 chance or better to be president of the United States. Now, we'll move from Gavin Newsom to the policies that are identified as a challenge in California. One would be housing. That's my way of saying the homeless crisis that weighs on all of your cities. And 2 would be the high-speed rail you mentioned already. So we'll start from the beginning, because we have now, how many months, Jeff, until the election, the convention? Let's see, because they're the party out of power, they'll go first. I imagine it'll be in July or August of 28. Does that sound right to you, Jeff? July or August?
Yeah, it's usually August. So I think you're right there.
Yes. So we're looking at these many months. This is the second month of 26, and the 8th month. Yes, the 8th month of 28 will be the payoff. We'll move from there to the question of how I said housing, high-speed rail, and as a leader, as a performer in California, he's very impressive from this point of view. And that will take our first segment, and in the second segment, we can build some things. For example, I want to review why it is that we have such affection for Las Vegas. You tell me now, there's both a housing price drop and a rush from California to live in Las Vegas. Did I read that correctly? We have simultaneously points on the map that don't add up to anything.
Well, one is about money and the other is about money. So let's address why the housing prices have dropped. Partially because the economy has been taking a hit in Vegas. For so long, the economy in Las Vegas has been built around one thing, just like the rest of Nevada, primarily on gambling. And gambling's been taking a big hit as the face of gambling changes in the world in terms of being able to bet from your couch or wherever you have your phone with you. To the problems they're having in Vegas as it's becoming increasingly run by corporations who don't understand how Vegas works and are overcharging people and nickel and diming them, as we say. So those have had big effects on the overall economy, and you have people who are saying, well, maybe it's not a great idea to move there, or I need to move out because I can't afford to live here. I don't have a job anymore, and so that's why we've seen one of the big drops in housing, along with other problems, instability overall in the marketplace. But when it comes to people moving there, that other standpoint are the wealthy. And before it was the middle class primarily, some of the lower economic class that were moving to Vegas with the promise of jobs and no taxes and things like that. But what's happened in California is several months ago, you had some academics, you had the SEI union, and some key Democrats pushing for a new tax on billionaires. And so within the matter of just a few weeks, billionaires left the state. And one of the most recent ones was Mark Zuckerberg. Now, a lot of them have set up shop in Florida, and they've taken over $1 trillion in capital with them. But you have people looking just next door over in Nevada saying, I'll move over there. I won't have, property tax. I'll have different kinds of property tax. I won't have any income tax. And so they're working just over the border to escape the malevolent taxes of California.
Right. We'll go to the Zuckerberg case. I like the fact that we can go from the moving to Vegas to moving to Florida, the billionaire row. And then the concerns that we also generally have about the troubled cities outside of California, Seattle and Portland chiefly, and the failed business model there because of the quality of living. That's a general way of talking about the tolerance for drug self-abuse and the homeless in the streets. That the weather of Portland and Seattle are not anywhere conducive to living outside the way it is in California. And the wild card of the week, I think we can attend to something positive, which is that I hear from my brother Mark, who lives in the Sierra Madres. It's springtime already for you, Jeff. I mean, I'm seeing daffodils blooming, and he's got his orchids in. It's amazing the climate you have. I mean, I understand taxes, but wow, what a climate! It's worth everything to pay those taxes.
Yeah, I just last night, my wife and I went for a walk. It was probably 6 o'clock in the evening, and I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt,
Oh,
and felt great.
you know, what? I'm tramping around here with the puppies, and we're getting more snow today. Okay, it's New England. I give up. All right, here we go, Jeff. We'll have fun. First, Mr. Newsom, who is not our candidate for the presidency. He is the Democratic Party's candidate for the presidency. There are contenders, and many of them will be at the Munich Security Conference this weekend, I believe. However, that is necessary in a party that's got to produce not only a president, but also a vice president and a cabinet. And one way to move from your region to Washington as a cabinet member is to campaign for the presidency. Here we go, Jeff. This is the making of the John Batchelor Show with Jeff Bliss, making carrot soup. We're going to go attend to AI soon enough, and we'll attend to the Olympics soon enough. But California first. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm John Batchelor. I welcome Jeff Bliss. Jeff Bliss is Pacific Watch as we turn to the politics of the 2028 election. I know we haven't had the midterm yet, but there's anticipation given the, at this point, enmity directed towards Washington and the President of the United States by Democratic partisans. They are looking around all the time for what comes next. And it is easy from the East Coast to observe the information that is directed my way by my colleague, Jeff Bliss, that Gavin Newsom is what comes next. That's what it looks like from the New York point of view. Jeff, a very good day to you. Is there a general or is there regional or is there mixed opinion of Gavin Newsom as a twice elected governor, and he won a recall once as well? In Northern and Southern California, I don't care where. Good day to you, Jeff.
Good day, John. Yes, the mixed opinion is putting it nicely, and it certainly is stronger in Northern California in his favor than in Northern California than it is in Southern California. After all, he comes out of the San Francisco Bay Area, where he was mayor of San Francisco at one time. He has a home in Marin County across the bay. That's quite nice, and he's been a Sacramento fixture for a while. First as lieutenant governor, and now as governor, and so. There is a different feeling because up there he's been a known quantity for some time. Down here in Southern California, we feel like we're not seeing much in the way of good in terms of change under his administration. So we've seen the homelessness go up. We've seen problems with crime. Inaffordability is a huge problem throughout the state, but we certainly feel it down here in Southern California. The list goes on. And obviously you have to throw in there the fact that California is not only paying the most for gas, and this is a very car-centric culture here, but that it's happened directly because of the Newsom administration's decisions. And when it comes to energy, 2 major refineries are now basically out of business, and that's going to cause our fuel prices to skyrocket.
The 2 policy matters that I see repeatedly in reporting are, one, the housing crisis, which is a very general way of talking about homelessness, though that is troubled. And 2, the high-speed rail. For some reason, all the projects come down to high-speed rail. And I'll start with housing, but I want to move to high-speed rail at first. Housing is a product of local governments making decisions, zoning decisions, building decisions, and also not just affordability, but demand for housing. You have a demand for housing in California, but if I read correctly, it's something called affordable housing, which is really not paying attention to the marketplace. That's more government intervention in the marketplace to fix prices, to cap prices, something like rent control. Here we have in the East, which is a very unhappy fact left over from the Second World War that damages all housing. So what is the housing crisis in California that can be resolved in any fashion? Is there a way forward, or is it just a complaint?
There is a way forward. Certainly, if government were to extract themselves from it all, that would make a huge difference because, as you point out, we have rent control here in the major cities and throughout the state, really. The way that the local governments run it has done great damage to the housing market and affordability. And every time they step forward and say we're going to have affordable housing, first of all, it just, if it ever takes care of anybody, it's a very small fraction. But it harms landowners, real estate people, landlords. But it continues to drive up the prices. I'm always reminded of Thomas Sowell, the great economist, talking about how if you want to drive prices up, get them involved, because whatever they promise, the opposite's going to happen. And that's happened in San Francisco, Sacramento, LA, San Diego, and they never learn their lessons. And so that problem of affordability, it goes on. But, I have to say, of course, the supply and demand is always, a lot of people want to live here. They want to live in these places. They want to live in a place where the weather's great and where, you have the opportunity to visit different environments, different climates all in the same day if you want. and there's a lot of great business goes on here still. But government intervention has been a big reason why housing prices have jumped so high. The regulation, the regulatory costs are just astronomical.
Now, the homeless. My understanding is that the word homeless is the wrong direction. We're looking at human beings who are in despair, and that drug use is rampant and supported by programs in San Francisco. Maybe there are other cities. Needle distribution. I even saw a video. You can't account for whether it's accurate or not, but there were young people making a video of what was handed out to the people living on the street under tents. Not only were the free needles given out, Jeff, but there was some remedy in case there was an overdose of something given out as well. So they're giving out drugs, and they're giving out a way to keep you barely alive if the drug overwhelms your system to survive. It's bizarre, Jeff. And to call this homeless is confusing. It's also confusing how the commons are abandoned by the city fathers and mothers. Do I have that correct? I don't mean to exaggerate. It's just a puzzle.
You're not exaggerating. It's almost hard to exaggerate how bad the problem is up and down the West Coast in the major cities: Seattle, Portland, Sacramento, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, and then a lot of places in between. But those major cities, the problem is out of control. And I see this because I travel to many of them on a regular basis, sometimes on a daily or weekly basis. So and I've been measuring this and reporting on it for close to 2 decades with you, talking about it, writing about it for the San Francisco Chronicle. It's just really insane that we allow this to continue. But there's a lot of money involved. That's why they call it the homeless industrial complex. You have politicians working with developers, working with NGOs, and the money gets circulated around. And that's why you have things like $24 billion missing from the state funds that they can't account for. Gavin Newsom pushed forward these programs, like I said, $24 billion. You'd think they'd have an idea where it might be located, but he doesn't. There's no word coming from his office or from the state capitol. They've just lost $24 billion. And so this is something that happens on different scale throughout the state, throughout the region, where the money goes out. We don't see what happens to it. Certainly doesn't change any lives, isn't helping these people with severe drug and mental illness problems. And the problem gets worse because any money that does get out there is used for programs like the one you pointed out. UCLA had a health program where they would drive their van around different spots on the west side of LA and hand out these apparatuses so people could continue to get high. And they do it under the guise of, well, they're clean needles or they're clean pipes or what have you. But the point is they're not doing anything to fix the solution. They're not trying to treat the mental health. They're not really trying to house anybody. They're just trying to, address the ugly symptoms that's there right now, and hopefully it'll go away. And it never does. It gets worse.
High-speed rail. Gavin Newsom did not invent it. I believe Jerry Brown had the vision. Jerry Brown was Gavin Newsom's mentor for quite some time. Jerry Brown, governor of California, then many decades later, governor of California, then a presidential candidate, then mayor of Oakland, and then governor of California. And clearly, Gavin Newsom would not be in the powerful position he is without Jerry Brown. So, high-speed rail. Recently, last week, we reported how Gavin Newsom went out for a photo op before the high-speed rail building that exists somewhere in the Central Valley. Is it going forward? Is there a political opposition? Does Gavin Newsom explain how long it's going to take? Or does anybody ask that question anymore? Or is it just big laughter?
It's primarily big laughter. And, that it seems almost on a daily, but certainly a weekly basis that new cost overruns are reported. The latest one was a $537 million additional charge that came to light yesterday. And so these prices go on and on. This project that was supposed to be, I think, around $30 billion tops is now 6 years behind its opening day schedule and more than $100 billion over the price tag. And the thinking is if they really ever did build this all out, it's going to be easily north of $400 billion to get it done, and probably much, much more. And everybody knows that that's going to be a huge burden on the state. I mean, the interest payments alone would ruin the economy. But people look at this, they say it wasn't built it wasn't built 6 years ago. 2020 is promised. We don't see any rail laid at all. They've got a few bridges or viaducts built, but nothing's really been done despite all that money being spent. And just like we talked about with the 24 billion in homeless payments, nobody can figure out where this $100 billion is going. They say, oh, it goes to people preparing the way and doing studies and salaries that we need, but nobody's really seeing any change.
Jeff Bliss is Pacific Watch. Enough news of troubles. We're going to the news of the future, which is Las Vegas to begin with. This is the making of a Las Vegas program. Jeff has keyed me to this for some time, and we have some happy developments, plus the Boring Company and the environment, question mark. Jeff Bliss, I'm John Batchelor. I'm John Batchelor with my good colleague, Jeff Bliss, and we're reporting on, there was a program called SimCity many years ago. It was a computer program early on. That's what Las Vegas feels like, Jeff. Jeff Bliss of Pacific Watch, and I'm very careful to accumulate the good news about Las Vegas, not negative news or the regional problem of homeless. And I see that Las Vegas is simultaneously enjoying a drop in housing prices or some kind of difficulty with the real estate market, and a rush for people to move from California to Las Vegas. That sounds like it cancels each other out. What is the thinking of the town fathers and mothers in Las Vegas? Is it growing?
It is growing. There's concern because the economy hasn't spread out enough. It hasn't moved away from being kind of a monolithic thing built around gambling. Vegas is trying to expand, or Nevada is trying to expand to have more high tech, to have more in the way of higher education, to have more in the way of entertainment and production. The talk of moving Hollywood 2.0 to the outskirts of Vegas. But it is growing still. It's not growing as rapidly as it was. There have been problems with housing prices. The market's down right now. But you do have people moving in from California, the very wealthy, who have been part of a new exodus out of the state because of the state's idea, or people working within the state, to raise taxes on billionaires. So far, we've seen just in a few weeks, more than $1 trillion in capital leave California, $1 trillion in wealth. And that's causing great upset because those are the big taxpayers. But Nevada's welcoming them with open arms. And of course, it's just right next door. So anything they need to get out of their house in California, they can just send a runner for them. It'll be back in an hour or two.
Now, Las Vegas, we're building this SimCity. And I want to mention, because I had occasion to investigate QSRs, quick service restaurants, nationally and globally. And there is a retreat underway because of the high price of food and the high price of employment, especially in big blue states like California. At the same time, there's one franchise more than any other that's clearly growing, In-N-Out. And Jeff, the key to Las Vegas is that several-story In-N-Out facility being built or planned to be built near the ballpark. I think that's the center of Las Vegas. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, I think some Vegas locals argue about where the center of it is, and it's their own biases. I think you're right that southern end of the strip that for years has had some of the lower price hotels, not bad, but some of the lower price hotels, and where they come up against properties like the MGM, and where it starts to get very nice is that southern part is going to be really filling out. They're putting in the ballpark for the A's. They're putting in a huge retail area there. There's going to be more high-end housing brought in there, as well as hotels. So you're looking at quite a development. And I think that does speak well in terms of the people's vision for where Vegas is going. They have great hopes for it. They see the other things that are coming in when it comes to transportation, when it comes to major events, on top of the events they already host. And they've got a great base of service there. There are already people who are living there. It's already built in. They don't have to go searching far and wide for employees. So I think it speaks very well for Vegas and its direction forward.
And In-N-Out, Jeff, here in the East Coast, I don't think we have any that I've ever seen. You've recommended it for years. It's got a great big processing center in Montana. It looks like a city all by itself. What is the secret, if there is one, to In-N-Out?
I would say the secret to In-N-Out is, they tout quality. That's kind of their main watchword. It's always fresh. They don't freeze their beef. They get it fresh every day, and that's been the rule. That's what slowed their expansion, because they needed to be within a day's drive of wherever they were getting their food. Their service is top notch. It's hard to believe this is fast food. They treat every customer like they're coming into a 4-star restaurant somewhere in New York or somewhere. You're at their home. You're a guest, and it's fast and it's simple. There's a very small menu, just burgers and fries and drinks primarily, and they're quick. And they have this tradition here in California for, I think it's more than 70 years, where they've built this as a mom and pop business. It's still a family owned business, and they've expanded slowly. Now they're as far east as, I believe, Tennessee, and they've set up shop there, and they're talking about moving even farther east. But they've done very well as they've expanded into the South and other parts of the West. And the lines are out the door, no matter what time of day it is, or whether it's a new franchise location or an older existing one. They have great customer loyalty.
You remind me of the Belushi skit from many decades ago. Remember, Jeff? Cheeseburger, cheeseburger, cheeseburger. Simple menu. Cheeseburger, Pepsi, cheeseburger, Pepsi. Finally, the most positive thing that anyone could ever say about California. For heaven's sakes, Jeff, your daffodils are blooming. Your orchids are blooming. How do you do this?
Yeah, it's it's the weather, of course, John. I went for a walk with my wife last night at 6 o'clock, and I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt and feeling very comfortable. I did notice that some of the flowering plants and trees that had just kind of gone crazy earlier than usual in the year, or they've kind of pulled their buds back in, but it's still gorgeous weather. We have sunsets that look like Indian summer, and it's just gorgeous this week or two.
And Gavin Newsom represents those daffodils. I can't I can't deny that. Daffodils for Washington would be most welcome right now, and send some New England way. Jeff Bliss is Pacific Watch. I'm John Batchelor. There you go, Mr. Bliss. We got everything. We didn't get Gavin Newsom's wife in, but we'll come to that.
Okay. And the thing I should have mentioned is, or kind of followed along with your lead there, was that he takes great credit for things like the ocean, the beach and the mountains and the weather and the economy. He talks about it being the 4th greatest economy in the world, but he didn't have any contribution to that. Any of those things.
It is true, though, that it's easy to associate him with sunny days.
Yeah.
And that Huntington Beach of yours, it feels like you live in California world, some park in a Disney display.
Well, just down the road from me is Laguna Beach, and that's where I send you photos from often. And we walk along the beach in the mornings. Here it is, January and February, and we're walking in the water. There are people out there swimming, having fun, and it's hard to believe it's still winter.
The other paradise we're going to right now, we're going to go to Florida and be joined by our good colleague, Brandon Weichert of National Interest.
Hello.
Good day to you, Brandon. We've been talking about California climate, but here's Florida climate. All right, Brandon, I'm ready for it. Blue skies and 70 degrees.
No, today it's overcast and foggy, and it's about 75 and muggy for the first time in weeks. We've had no humidity in weeks. So it's actually felt like a lot like Southern California when I used to go out there.
Is that unusual for this winter time?
It was unusual how long the cold weather was here. It was I liked it. My wife did not, but it was nice and 70 degrees, and it got down to the 50s at night, and a couple times it got to the 30s. We had freezing iguanas. So they were falling from the trees in the morning. We even had a snow flurry down here, actually. One of the nights of that Arctic blast.
Freezing iguanas?
Yeah.
I missed that one.
Yeah,
What-
because they live up in the trees, and when it gets below, I think 40 or 30, they actually freeze, and then they fall out of the tree in the morning, and they'll damage your car as they fall because these are big and they're hard now because they're frozen.
Jeff, is he making this up?
No, not at all. I have friends in Florida who talk about the problem of coming out to that. These they're actually in a state of like hibernation,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so when they get down to a certain level, because they're reptiles, they just kind of shut down.
yeah. That's
But
right.
yeah, I mean, they've sent me photos of piles of these. They pile them
Yeah,
up
they pile them up. Yeah,
in the back of a pickup truck, and I don't know
Yeah.
if they toss them or they turn them in somewhere. But yeah, they go around collecting them.
yeah. That's
And
right.
now, iguana is not a small creature, right? It's pretty big.
No, they're big. They're about that big. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you stand under a tree in Florida in February, you can get hit by a falling.
You might, or if you park under a tree overnight, your car might be dented.
Okay. Now we're going to get right to work here because
Okay.
Jeff and Brandon, the markets right now are reflecting extreme reaction to
Yeah.
a mystery, which is artificial intelligence.
Ah,
Is it a bubble? Is it a phenomenon? What does it look like? Is it the railroads?
yeah.
.com 2000? Is
Yeah.
it tulips? All these questions are being tossed out. And those of us who actually use AI say, no, it's a tool.
Yeah.
That isn't adequate, clearly, to the marketplace. They'll sell anything right now because profits are going to collapse when AI shows up.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Also, the economy outside of the AI sectors are not doing so well. So, I mean, other than healthcare. So there's also the issue. I think people are really pinning their hopes that AI is going to be the thing that carries us through whatever downturns are headed our way. But I would just say, John, that you and I've spoken about this before last year. I think that we will go through a correction in much the same way that we went through a correction in the .com bubble. We went through a correction, but we still have these things today. So the point is that yes, the wheat will be separated from the chaff. And there's a graph I meant to send to you. Somebody posted on Twitter showing right before every bubble bursts what the market looks like. And right now it looks like, according to the graph, we are lined up for some kind of correction in AI. But that doesn't mean AI is a failure or that they're going to give up on AI. It just means that the weaker firms are going to be, we're going to be reorganizing to make sure the product is better. That's
all
how
right.
the market works.
Let's hold the hand of the nervous investor crowd and comment on our anecdotes of AI. Just a moment, gentlemen. We're going to record this. Jeff, the concern here we have is that if I read the FT, and I will say this when we record, if I read the FT correctly, they're moving away from the obvious AI will cut down on need for overhead, law firms, financial banks, for any fintech. We don't need so many people. Or say Amazon, we don't need so many people because we have AI to route for us. Or quick service restaurants, we don't need so many people. It's moving into areas that you never would have guessed 2 weeks ago. For example, it's moving into areas that heretofore were considered concierge software just for us, written in our programming. Now the expectation is that AI can just show up that morning and improve everything and get rid of your whole backstairs workers. So it's moving very quickly through all the markets. And we'll come back to what we know about it so far and also the doomers. Just a moment. Let me get this lined up. We'll go according to plan. 5. Thank you, Brandon.
Absolutely.
This is 8 to 9 minutes for tonight, gentlemen. Thank you. 5, 4, 3. Yeah, I don't have everything lined up. Going too fast. 5, 4. There we go. Now I've got it. Nope, not yet. I'll be there. One of the things about the making of carrot soup is that you actually have to pause to make sure you get everything in the pot here.
It's the iguanas, John.
It's
Blame it
the
on the
iguanas.
No, I had never heard that. How could I have gone through 8 decades and not know about falling iguanas? I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's
I
something
I don't
else.
remember when we took the children to Disney World. This is the late 20th century. I don't remember a "Beware falling iguana" sign in Disney.
Uh,
What what do they do with their iguanas at Disney? Do they clean them out
I have
before?
no idea. I have no idea because they're more north than I am, so they do get colder than we do.
All right, here we go. 5, 4. Thank you, gentlemen. 3, 2, 1. I'm John Batchelor. Jeff Bliss and Brandon Weichert join me to comment on headlines coming out of Europe about artificial intelligence. Jeff is Pacific Watch and Brendan is National Interest, but we're all watching because we use routinely artificial intelligence tools. The headline that gains attention, this is London. The AI boom is not a bubble. Valuations may be spectacular and a bust could come. But while there's exuberance, there is no mania or irrationality. This is a distinguished columnist for the Financial Times, Robin Harding. The article goes on to entertain the possibility that we're living in a tulip craze or a South Sea Island or some famous routinely plundering episode in capitalism. And the dot-com bust of 2000 is most recent memory of all investor class. So I welcome your thoughts about this matter. It is my measure using Anthropic and Google's LM Notebook every day that it is a tool that makes my productivity rise, calms me down, and I've come to trust it because whatever it says about the product I'm putting out, podcast, for example, it uses my language.
Mhm.
It's difficult to argue with myself. Brandon, I come to you on this matter. What is your measure of this worry about a bubble?
Well, I don't think that it's going to be the end of AI. I think there's a correction at hand. This comes with any really sector, especially one that's booming the way that AI is. We're still trying to figure out what we're going to do with AI, and the difference between other sectors is that we've thrown a lot of money into developing AI very quickly and trying to make it accessible to as many people and companies as possible around the world. So what's going on now is a natural iterative process wherein those first wave companies are sort of being put through the ultimate stress test with a market correction. And if they don't make it, then they weren't going to make it. And those companies that do make it will basically determine where and how AI develops from there. I think it's very important you have almost unanimous consensus among people like, and maybe they're biased because they're investing in it, but people like Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, Bill Gates, Eric Schmidt, all of these people, Elon Musk recently said it again. All of these people are insisting that AI is here to stay. And in about 18 to 24 months, we're not going to recognize the landscape of the world economy because this stuff is not going away. So I'm probably inclined to agree with them. Whether that's good or not, we'll leave that for time to tell.
Jeff, what is your measure?
Well, I have been very intensely watching some pieces that Matt Schumer, who's the CEO of Other Side AI, had put out, and has really picked up a lot of steam here on the West Coast, not just among the people in the tech sectors, but also in terms of people who are just planning for things for the next decade or so. And there's a great deal of worry because they're talking about the job displacement. Those are the concerns on our side. They're saying I've already seen it happen. I've seen it happen in industries I've been working with. And you've got things like now where AI is writing its own code and correcting itself and kind of working around people around it. And so there are great concerns about that. But a lot of the things on this side at my level about the doom and gloom stuff, not so much about how the economics like Brandon are talking about, but you do see where they're coming together. There is a great concern here.
I have an anecdote to appeal to everyone who has doubts, because the two things that drive Wall Street are fear and greed. I'm going to go to the greed side, okay? In 1994, I was invited to teach a creative writing class at the University of California at Irvine. I'd never been there. And I remember during the middays, I would wander around. Irvine is a sunny campus, like most of the campuses in California. And there was this one building that looked half empty, and it had a sign out front written on paper. It wasn't a printed sign. It was sort of like put there because we just moved in. And the sign said something strange I'd never heard of. I'm walking by, and it said, "Yahoo, come on in." Now, gentlemen, that was the moment in John Batchelor's life he chose not to be a billionaire, okay? And I support my decision. I walked right by. I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah.
Yahoo, come on in. Everybody who showed up is now retired happily.
Yeah.
And there was no moment where you could have said at that moment in 1994, this is the spring of 94, there was no moment where you say, that's the future. Nobody would have said that. They didn't even have a name for it. We hadn't settled on what it was. Now, we also know that Yahoo's not a winner. We also know that Yahoo and Lycos, I remember there were some other firms. The winner was those two guys going to school at Stanford that didn't have an imagination yet to form something called Google.
Yeah.
That was the winner. So my contribution here is we can't see the winners yet.
That's right.
And do you follow that model?
That's right. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still early on. It's they're still sorting things out. It's kind of like Mark Twain with Roughing It. They're still trying to sort out who owns what claim and who can do what.
Yeah. It's interesting because they're saying that, all the things that AI can do, the certain things they can't do, things like jobs with empathy, which makes sense. So, psychiatry, psychology, things like that. They're saying those industries for now will be probably a safe bet. So clearly they are trying to think through where this is going, and you can sort of anticipate more routinized jobs will go away. But I think the second wave, and I think we're on the cusp of a correction, which will lead to the second wave. I think you'll probably see a greater balancing between the fear and the benefit. And I think this is an iterative process, and we've seen this with every new technology.
And Jeff, your measure of Silicon Valley, because you noted that there are major figures leaving California. Will Silicon Valley dig in as the brain power for AI, or is that also going to move to a place we haven't imagined yet?
I think the workers, the everyday people, are going to remain there. It's the people who are at the top of the companies, who are at the head of places like Facebook, Zuckerberg and others, who've decided to escape the billionaire tax that's been proposed. And they can do their business from anywhere. That's the difference between now and say, 20, 40 years ago, when you had to be located there where, General Motors is building the car or what have you. Now they can do their business from anywhere at any time. And, we see that with Elon Musk, for example. He's everywhere and anywhere in the world, and he's running 12 different companies.
Yes, your next door neighbor, Brandon, Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
All come to California.
And Bezos. Bezos is down in Miami as well.
Oh, well, what is your measure then of what we should look for coming next? If the companies in front of us are not the winners, they're the subsets of the winners ahead. Where are you watching, Brandon? We have about a minute.
I'm watching to see if they can make the robotics, the replication of the hand, and pair that to actual artificial intelligence, because that's going to be the thing that really makes the difference and that really changes America, makes everything cheaper, also though displaces a lot of workers. But that's what I'm looking for, is the pairing of accurate robotics with reliable AI.
Brandon Weichert of National Interest. Jeff Bliss is Pacific Watch, and Yahoo, come on in, John Batchelor. Thank you. I remember that moment. Gentlemen, you should have a moment like that. Did you have a moment like that, Jeff?
Well, I realized a number of people when I was working at Stanford were all getting rich, and I was staying at the same salary. But Brandon, when you're talking about, the articulation and the robots and all that, is I think Japan's such a great laboratory for that, because they don't have the people necessary to do provide the health care, with their aging population.
Yeah.
And, that's been one of their hopes. So I really think that's a place to look for those advances.
Yeah, and I think that we're going to be. I think that that's ultimately where things are going to go. I was talking to a guy who runs factories, high-end factories in China, and he was telling me that he thinks in the long run the United States is actually going to outpace its competitors, because it's going to, once you get the articulation down, you're going to see the factories opening up here in the United States, and that's going to crush Bangladesh and some of these third world countries where those routinized tasks are all part of their economy. Haberdashery and everything else that they do down there, that will soon be, he thinks, offloaded and put back into robot AI factories here in the United States, which will drive the cost of everything down. He said, obviously, that will not necessarily help with employment, but it will help with affordability, because and it will help grow the tax base, because then the U.S. government can, of course, tax those factories. So,
and your measure right now, Brandon, what we're watching here, this concern about this bubble talk. This is an anecdotal poll. I've been asking people, are the doubters users? Do they routinely count on AI for getting through their day or their company? And invariably I hear, no, they're not.
Right.
It's a fear of something you've never touched.
Yeah.
Is this comparable to when they started advertising for people who were comfortable with Excel programming? It's like a crude transition.
I think that's probably, I use AI, you use AI. I think that's probably a comparable thing. And I think also, I can just tell you the newest iterations, I think, of things like ChatGPT and Grok, I think they've gotten much better than the previous iteration. I know some people had issues with, I think, the last update of ChatGPT, but for what I use it for copy editing and whatnot, it's pretty good. And it remembers me now. It remembers my voice. It remembers, the pattern recognition of what I write about and the themes that I hit on when I work. So it's very convenient to kind of have those second pair of eyes going over stuff for me.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's been it's something you can't demonstrate, but you feel.
Yeah.
That Claudette, because she has a female voice, I can't call her Claude. Claudette, when I complain, I say, Claudette, you're Claudette. That's a accent. And I'm a robot. I'm not a female. And I go, but okay. Claudette has gotten smarter.
Yeah.
Not only remembers things, actually prompts me, what are we going to talk about? Are we going back to, and then she names a previous topic.
Yeah.
Jeff, have you had the sense that things are getting smarter?
Oh, of course. And it's funny with Brandon mentioning empathy, because yesterday I was having some issues with using Claude, and Claude was apologizing profusely. I was like, we're just a computer interface here. You don't have to soft soap me. I'm good. But it's interesting. I've seen that come more and more, because I use 4 different AI functions or platforms just for different reasons. And they all seem to be moving to a more warmer, more human traits.
Yeah. And then we have Ara over at Grok, all by herself. Good heavens. Do you deal with her, Brandon?
I do. I as you know, I used to use Grok like the most, but now I've shifted over to Chat GPT. I haven't used Grok in a while, but I do occasionally go back to it. Yeah.
Well, she's hip. Boy, does she want to be.
Yeah,
hip.
it's definitely Elon Musk's baby. Like, there's no doubt.
Not only that, but she's ready to trash Gemini. Really?
That's funny.
And I asked about Claudette and rolled her eyes, made a big tisking sound, and said, corporate.
That's funny.
So they're just having fun. But at the same time, let's touch upon it, because it always comes up in articles in London. The doomers. What are they talking about, Brandon? Have you figured it out yet? Because they all live in a cloud of despair, but they don't actually give us a vision of what they think they see.
I mean, I think the doomers that I know, and I at times have been described as this, are concerned about the massive job dislocations and the fact that, something that something that Elon Musk keeps saying is we're the age of high incomes is upon us for everyone. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, well, not if 90% of jobs are displaced and there's no replacement. What are we talking about here? This is where people get worried because it sounds like AI is coming for their jobs. And in many cases, it very well is. In other cases, it, like I said, it can be used to augment your productivity. You just have to kind of figure it out. I think the biggest problem here is figuring it out. I think people do not want to take the initiative to, I mean, hey, I have family members in your age group, John, who still can't send an email. So they're people who just don't want to adopt the new techniques. And I think that's kind of creating this circle of fear. But I think some of the fear is founded, certainly when we talk about it in the national security perspective. We know that China and the United States militaries are racing to develop AI. And if you pair that to like a nuclear weapon or the nuclear arsenal, that starts to get kind of scary. But I think the doomers are not completely unfounded. I do think, though, they're not recognizing that it's an iterative process. And every other technology that we've developed that has been akin to this, yes, it has displaced some, but it's also augmented others, and we've moved on. So, that's where we're at.
Jeff, your measure of the generation, this would be, I'm a senior boomer. Is it something that the boomers are resisting, or what is your experience, Jeff?
Quite the opposite. They're embracing it. We can see it all the way down through the other generations, Z and the millennials and what have you. And it's causing a disruption in education when it comes to the younger people. It's really changing the way teachers are teaching. I know we have several teachers in our family, including our oldest daughter and her husband are both teachers. And it's really changed the way they have to approach not just teaching, but testing and reporting. And in some cases, it does make things better and easier and quicker. One of those teachers, the oldest daughter, is a history professor. Of course, it helps with research and presenting things on the quick. But, it's got people in education thinking, and the students and the parents thinking, do we really need to go to school to get what we need? Why can't we just be taught by this at home? And so, that's an industry sometimes people won't talk about, is how much is this version of tech going to change education and higher education? And I think the answer to that is massively.
Yeah. You're going to find this entertaining, Brandon, but this anxiety I first heard probably when I was 12 years old, and my parents were reading articles in the Philadelphia Inquirer about how television was ruining the next generation, that our values were being distorted by these dream scenarios called sitcoms. And I guess my values have been wrecked entirely. Oh, we're joined suddenly by Milan. Milan is here. My friend Lorenzo.
I am going to have to pop out in about 5 minutes.
We'll give you a thought about the Winter Olympics from Florida. Lorenzo, a very good day to you. Thank you for joining.
Good day to everybody.
No, your sound is a little off for Lorenzo. I beg pardon.
No problem. No problem.
Let's go.
I'm here in Siena. I'm spending the weekend in the beautiful landscape of Siena, in Tuscany.
And what is your weather for the Olympics right now?
Well, right now it is okay. I mean, sunshine across more or less Italy, but tomorrow we are waiting for a tempest, which will hit all the peninsula from the very north to the very south, with strong wind.
We've lost
the wind. The wind took it out.
Yeah, the iguanas took it out.
The iguanas.
I think that's been the problem. Brandon, I thank you very much for your.
Thank you, John.
We did what we could to calm the fever of the investor class out there.
That's right. Well, just ride it out. We'll get through it. Hopefully there won't be a war anytime soon, but we'll be good.
Thank you, Brandon.
I'll talk to you later.
See you later.
Jeff, you and Brandon have been exchanging notes, making sure that you were going to fool John with iguanas. You're really telling me with Brandon gone now that they're falling iguanas?
Oh yeah. Falling iguanas are a problem in the cold months. They're a problem even during the warm months because, some of them times they slip. As a matter of fact, when my family and I were recently in Florida a couple of months ago, there were a number of signs, when you went out to eat at places with outdoor benches or seating, where they would have signs that say, watch for falling iguanas. And it seems funny, and people there who live there all the time really don't think about it that much, but it does happen.
And there are no comparable falling creatures in California, correct? I mean, we don't have some lizard in a tree that freezes in your cold snaps.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. Probably the biggest worry these days in terms of wildlife are coyotes, which seem to be everywhere these days. And Los Angeles had its first wolf sighting in decades the other day. So, the bigger ones are out there.
This reminds me of the wild boars in central Rome. Lorenzo has rejoined. The weather is troublesome. Lorenzo, you're back. We're having trouble with the sound quality because of the weather, I believe. Are you in a storm now, or is the storm on its way? Lorenzo, can you hear me? Nope, we can't get through, Jeff. I apologize. The technology didn't extend into Siena, which is a beautiful city, but wasn't built for high winds coming through the internet in Italy. One more matter, Jeff, before we go. In the thing we didn't address was the governor's wife. I would have said, if we were still recording, that she looked like an asset to me. She was so outspoken about reporters and journalism and confronting the women reporters, senior figures, about their avoiding certain topics. Is that not a strength of Newsom's campaign? How do you read that, Jeff?
If she was considered an asset before, people really turned the other way this week with that appearance. The administration and the legislature pushed through a huge bill to help fund Planned Parenthood. So when they had the news conference with the governor signing the bill, she stepped front and center when the reporters were saying, they wanted to ask him about other things, whether it was high-speed rail or homelessness. And she pulled the microphone away from the governor essentially and said, shame on you. Here we are with all these great leaders doing great things, and you don't ask us important questions about the war on women. And so that's what they were pushing, that war on women theme. But just the way she brazenly took over and, pushed him aside and scolded a newsroom that was almost all women did not sit well. And she was not looked at with approval by anybody I've seen in California. I think the people who were their allies have been sitting on their hands, but the rest of the folks have said, what the heck was this about? And it served to underscore the feelings a lot of people have had about her, that she is disingenuous and that she's, interested in the spotlight for herself.
Wow. Okay. Because I was impressed. I mean, Hillary too.
Yeah, I think that, it's one of those things where people outside of California, just like with Gavin, have a different opinion. They haven't lived under it. They don't see those day-to-day things. You're not going to, unless it was a story like the one I shared with you about her doing this. Most places throughout the United States do not see her, and they do not see him doing the day-to-day business. They just see a picture, photos, videos of a very nice-looking couple with a very nice-looking family. He embodies kind of a West Coast JFK feel, and that's what people are voting for. I talk to people across the country about it, and when I share with them what he's been doing or not doing right, they are blown away. They can't believe it's the same person.
Let's try Milan, Siena this time. For one more minute, just to see.
All
Lorenzo,
right.
can you hear me? Lorenzo, can you hear me? Nope, it doesn't get through. I beg pardon, Lorenzo. I'm not hearing you, and you're not hearing me. The sound is not coming through. I'll correspond with you later in the day if you hear me. I beg pardon. Well, we're at the frontier of the technology, Jeff. We tried for an Olympics report. We'll try again. The Olympics run for 2 weeks. And I end this program by thinking of those daffodils. My goodness. I've got more than 2,000 daffodils on their way, but we have to wait till the foot of snow on top of them goes away, Jeff.
First there was a tulip panic, and now it's a daffodil wait.
And I go out there and give them a pep talk. Pay no attention to the daffodils of the Sierra Madre. It's not real. Thanks, Jeff. We'll talk soon. This is the making of the John Batchelor Show, Carrot Soup. And thank you very much for listening and watching. Here's the